students, once again welcome back to Bosco Campus Vision YouTube channel of Kottayam Don Bosco College. I am Rania, faculty member of PG Department of English. In this series, I am discussing the paper European Fiction, which is the elective paper for MA English Semester 3 students under Kerala University. In today's video lecture, I would like to give you a peripheral knowledge to the introduction of Modernism and Postmodernism in European fiction. So, as you all know, there are three novels prescribed for the third module of the paper European fiction, and these three novels are Tindrum, written by Gunther Grass, If on a Winter's Night a Traveller by Italo Calvino, and The Piano Teacher by Elfried Jelinek. So, before going deep into these three novels, let's have an introduction. So, let me begin with modernism in fiction. Okay, so as you all know, modernism was an intellectual movement. So, during the modern movement, new schools of thoughts, narrative techniques, and new theories of art and literature, such as symbolism, feminism, nihilism, objectivism, naturalism, so etc., emerged during this time. And in the case of fiction, 18th century was the cradle of the rise and growth of fiction. So, when modernism came to the literary genre fiction, it opposed traditional narrative style, setting, representative location, ordinary speech and plot. For example, when we consider the fiction during the time of Victorian age and fiction during the time of modernism. So if we are making a comparison of these two, we can see the changes happened in the narrative style, setting, then the speech, plot, etc. So modern novel challenges these narrative techniques, character portrayal, theme and style. During the time of modernism, some of the important literary figures who tried to improve novel form, and they contribute a lot to the genre, literary genre fiction. So these figures are Gustave Flaubert, Fyodor Dostoevsky, Emile Zola, and Henry James. And in the case of narrative style, stream of consciousness technique, it was one of the notable features of modernity. Dorothy Richardson and Virginia Woolf were also contributed to the fictional as well as non-fictional literary output. These two figures gave their literary output to the prose literature, especially prose literature of European fiction. Then, modern novels reveal revolutionary ideas and exploitation of women, exploitation of subaltern, and the impact of industrialization. So, as I mentioned, there are series of new schools of thoughts came forward, and naturalism and symbolism were the commonly appeared in modern novel. And when we examine the novels after First World War, during this time, modern novelists focused the idea of absurdity and meaninglessness of life. So these are the most common features that appeared in modern fiction of European literature. When we consider the novels of famous European writers, we can see that in the case of Henry James, his novels were the centers of consciousness with moral distinction. In the case of Joseph Conrad, he mixed idealism and corruption in his novel. Dorothy Richardson was an innovator of style, whereas Virginia Woolf attempted to write the feminine prose which encountered then dominant masculine realism. So, during that time, there was flourished masculine realism. At that time, Virginia Woolf came forward and she attempted to write feminine prose with which encountered then dominant masculine realism. And in the case of H.G. Wells, his novels revolved around the themes of education, social criticism, and also entertainment. D.H. Lawrence's novel revealed human experiences of meaninglessness. So these were the major figures appeared during the time of modernism in the case of European fiction. Now let's check postmodernism in fiction. Postmodernism shares many of the features of modernism. And postmodernist fiction features several literary movements and techniques. So here I am giving you only some of the new techniques or literary styles adopted by postmodern writers in European fiction. The first important thing is intertextuality. Intertextuality, the term. Julia Kristeva was coined this term in 1966 in order to explain there are two relationships going on whenever we read a text. So if we take a text for critical analysis, according to Julia Kristeva, there are two major relationships. There are two major relationships going on, or which analyzes the text. So the first one is the relationship between the reader and the text, and the second one is the relationship between the text and other texts. Okay, so here Julia Kristeva consider the relationship between the reader and the text is in the horizontal axis, and the relationship between the text and other text is in the vertical axis. Here the vertical axis gives us the definition of intertextuality. And postmodernist says, according to intertextuality, no text exists in isolation and works of literature can only be created using stuff that already exists. So, always the relationship between the text with other texts, that idea is exist. So, intertextuality, text within the text. So, there is definitely a relation between the text with other texts. This particular technique is applied in the novel Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. In the case of metafiction, second important technique was metafiction. This term metafiction was first used by William H. Gass in 1970. Metafiction suggests the kind of text that embodies its status as a text. Simply we can say that metafiction is story within a story. The very famous novel If on a Winter's Night a Traveler is an example of metafiction. Another important postmodern technique or postmodern feature is pastiche. Pastiche, we can say that it is a literary equivalent of a collage. Pastiche means imitate other texts or a genre. So, like pastiche, another important concept is also arise, that is parody. In parody, we are making the imitation, but we use some comical elements. Humor, it is humorous imitation. Parody is humorous imitation. It is used to poke fun. But in the case of pastiche, it is simply imitation and adopting the styles. So, imitation of text or genre. This technique, pastiche, is used by David Mitchell in his Cloud Atlas. Another important technique is maximalism. It is also a postmodern technique where minimalism is about making things neat, tidy and minimum. Maximalism is about embracing excess. So, usually in the case of postmodern, in the case of literature especially, this maximalism, most of this maximalist text, it contain lengthy descriptions. For example, Sadie Smith's white teeth. It is an example of applying this particular technique, maximalism. Another important thing is paranoia. Postmodernism grew out of a mid-late 20th century setting in which technology, consumerism and media were all growing rapidly. So as the world entered to a new era of mass communication and technology, so there exists a culture with the influence of this mass media and communication, techno-culture. The term is techno-culture. So because of this, writers started tapping into the theme of technology overdrive and people being left powerless. So it is the technology used to drive the people. So from such kind of an idea, the new literary theme or idea evolved, that is paranoia. Fragmentation and late capitalism are other two techniques employed by the novelists of European literature during the time of postmodernism. For fragmentation, you had already seen the example of fragmentation in The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, and in the William Faulkner's Absalom. In that work also we can see it is also an example of employing this technique, fragmentation. In the case of late capitalism simply suggests the novels are set on the background of industrialization. So how this industrialization influenced the lives of people. So this theme is employed in novels. So these are all maximalism, then fast stage, fragmentation, late capitalism, paranoia, metafiction, intertextuality. Then all these are the features of postmodern novels. Okay, dear students, with this I am concluding. So simply we can say that modernism and postmodernism give voice to the insecurities, disorientation and fragmentation of 20th century Western world. So simply we can say that modernism and postmodernism both employs fragmentation, discontinuity and decenteredness in theme and technique. So with this I am concluding today's class. Thank you. Have a nice time.